Welcome to Genesis Unleashed, where we unleash the truth of Genesis.
And on today's program, we're going to show you amazing design in living things.
Okay, welcome back to Genesis Unleashed, and we're looking at question number 6 out of our pamphlet, 15 Questions for Evolutionists, and we're going to give you the question, then we're going to give you the responses that skeptics have written in
We've
to
got
our
some responses
to our
from these, yes.
and then we'll respond to those and show once again how very difficult for evolutionists to give good responses to these questions. So here it is. Question number 6 in the pamphlet is this: living things look like they were designed. So how do evolutionists know that they weren't designed?
Okay.
And Richard Dawkins wrote, "Biology is the study of complicated things that have the appearance of having been designed with a purpose." Francis Crick, the co-discoverer of the double helix structure of DNA, wrote, "Biologists must constantly keep in mind that what they see was not designed, but rather evolved." They've just got to tuck it up there. The problem for evolutionists is that living things show too much design. Who objects when an archaeologist says that pottery points to human design, yet if someone attributes a design in living things to a designer, that's not acceptable? Why should science be restricted to naturalistic causes rather than logical causes? And you can, to get some more information about this article, or about this argument, I should say, go to creation.com/design -legit, and you're going to see a great article there that will get into this in more detail.
Yeah, I like that last question there that was tacked on the end. Why should science be restricted to naturalistic causes rather than logical causes? Shouldn't logic dictate where we go rather than limiting it to naturalism and censoring out any explanation that isn't naturalistic?
Sounds like a religious
it's going down that road, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. Okay, answer number 1. Here we've got obviously responses to this question, question number 6, like we had to the other responses. Here it is. They don't. But to say that there are is a mere argument from ignorance. So they look like they were designed. They don't.
Well, the evolutionists don't know if they were designed, that they weren't designed. But if you say they are designed, that's an argument from ignorance.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And this was also stated in part 1 in the argument. But design is based on what we do know. We know when we look at things, we can tell that things have been designed. And any of you watching the program, you know design when you see it.
Well, right off the bat, there's a problem here, isn't there? If evolutionists are saying, well, we don't know whether it's designed or whether it's not designed or not, they're arguing from an argument from ignorance. And as you just mentioned, we're arguing from what we do know, not from what we don't know. So he's actually got the shoe on the wrong foot here. Because how do we detect design? I mean, we do this constantly. There is a criteria that people use in everyday life to detect design. And for example, if you had a team of archaeologists or whatever, they're out in the field and they go into a cave, and they look around the cave and they see these pointy rocks. Kind of look like arrowheads or something like that, but they seem to be quite shaped, and there's lots of them. Or they see a bunch of circles, stones put in a circular fashion with some charcoal in the middle or something like that, and then they look on the wall and they see, paintings, or they see these scribbly lines, and they don't really know what it looks like, but boy, it looks like a language or something like that. Those would all be natural, logical conclusions based on the evidence you're looking at.
Right.
Because remember, we're not talking about, they didn't see all those things come to be. They just have happened upon them. Now they've got to make a logical decision here. They would come to the conclusions, I think, that I made based on the fact of the intelligent design that they're witnessing. Right?
Even though you don't know the design, you didn't see it be designed. Speaking of rocks in a circle, think of Stonehenge.
Right.
Nobody thinks that wasn't designed.
Just weather erosion.
Yes.
Random processes.
The wind moved those rocks into position.
Exactly. So you can detect design You look at a code system written on a wall. I mean, even if you don't know what the code system is communicating, like when they found the Rosetta Stone, they had this language and they couldn't interpret it, right?
But then you have a translation device.
That's right. And then they could figure out what the language is. But they knew it was a language even before they knew what it was saying.
You can recognize the design that's there, the intelligence that's behind it.
That's right. And
you have the SETI program as well. I mean, if we're
the search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Extraterrestrial intelligence, yes. Right. And folks there involved with that program, they're looking for complex coded signals that are not going to occur naturally. That implies that we can tell the difference between something that would be natural and something that would be intelligently designed.
Right.
That would come from intelligence.
For example, a coded language system, if we're listening for it, right? Because we want to hear signals from the aliens that are out there.
That's the idea.
Like yep. Right. If we could know that we could tell if it was intelligently designed, a code system, a language system, if it came from outer space, and then we look down our microscopes and we see DNA, which is an extremely complicated coded language system, why would you say that that's naturalistic, but if it came from outer space, it wasn't naturalistic? Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. Okay, answer number 2. If there were a designer, we should see designs tending toward simplicity, not complexity. Yet that is the opposite of what we see.
We need to make a point here, folks. The answers that we're listing here that have come in from skeptics, from evolutionists about these questions, we're not cherry picking them. We're not making them up. We're not just answering certain ones and not answering others. If you have a better answer to some of these questions, please email them in and we'll respond to them. This is an actual, I mean, I wanted to point that out because...
Do we need to answer this? Or is this...
Would you use that argument if you were talking about a computer? This
right,
computer is way more sophisticated than that computer. So the less sophisticated one was designed, but the more sophisticated one wasn't designed.
It doesn't really fly.
It's kind of nonsensical here. Okay, answer number 3. Vestigial organs provide evidence of evolution. These are structures which once had a purpose, but no longer do.
And this is, we've heard this many, many times over many years. Vestigial organs, there was dozens and dozens of them. For example, at the in Tennessee in 1925, at the famous Scopes trial,
yep.
There was all kinds of them listed, something like 200 different vestigial organs and so on, were in the books back at that time. But how many are there today? None.
Right.
People talk about the pituitary gland was a vestigial organ. It doesn't really have a useful function.
Or your appendix.
The appendix. Yeah. No, just rip it out. It doesn't really have a useful function. Well, they do have useful functions.
Right. And even if you could find an organ that you say, well, now is degenerate, it used to have a purpose, now it's degenerate, doesn't have a purpose, that's no argument for evolution anyway. This has always been a terrible argument from evolution because it fits the creationist model.
For the Bible.
Yeah, that we started in perfection and we've been degrading ever since. If you could find an organ that was on its way to becoming something, or just all of a sudden appeared or could do something and we never had it before, that might be an argument for evolution. But to go in the other direction, it's just not a good
work.
No.
Okay, another answer number 4 that has come in to question 6 here. There are structures that would be, or that are, horrendously designed, but they're easy to explain if they evolved. The laryngeal nerve, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that properly, is one example of this.
Right.
So this is a nerve that goes, well, from your brain, obviously,
right.
And it loops around down near the heart and then comes up to your
larynx again. Yeah. And so there's actually many different versions of this. We've got bad back, we've got weak backs, and all these
poorly designed
eye, and all these kind of things. But let's take on the laryngeal nerve here as the skeptic. This is a common argument, by the way. Richard Dawkins uses this in some of his books and things like this. Okay, well, let's look at a well-known textbook. Medical textbook, Gray's Anatomy, and see what they have to say about the laryngeal nerve. As the recurrent nerve hooks around the subclavian artery or aorta, it gives off several cardiac filaments to the deep part of the cardiac plexus. As it ascends in the neck, it gives off branches more numerous on the left than on the right side to the mucous membrane and muscular coat of the esophagus, branches to the mucous membrane and muscular fibers of the trachea, and some pharyngeal filaments to the constrictor pharyngeus inferior. Sorry, I might not have pronounced that correctly. here's the problem. Dawkins is only considering its main destination, which is the larynx.
Right.
In reality, this nerve has a role in supplying, parts of the heart, the windpipe muscles, mucous membranes, esophagus, which would be a good explanation for its route. It's doing multiple jobs along the way.
Isn't this kind of like the whole vestigial organ argument that was popular years ago? Really, the vestigial organs that used to be on the list many, many years ago,
right.
It's just that we didn't know what they were for
right.
yet. We do today, and as we learn more, as scientists learn more about how the human body works, this apparent bad design or the vestigial organs, they all fall by the wayside.
Right, right. And you think about it, even today, humans designing things. If we design something and it takes like let's say a longer route to do something.
Okay.
Let's say like a car, and you've got an engine in the front, so a vehicle with the motor in the front, and then you've got its exhaust pipe, and it takes this, this branching route towards the back, and then emits the exhaust.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
that could be a problem because that gives more opportunity for damage if you're driving along the road. I mean, it's all exposed along
corrosion,
the bottom.
You need to get your exhaust system
that's
replaced.
a terrible design.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I mean, there's a balance, right? When engineers are designing things, they might say, okay, well, yeah, but we can either do this or we can do this, but this is the optimum way to do it.
There's good reasons that it takes the long route rather than just going out the bottom of the car.
Right, and even if you could point to something, you said, well, I think I could have built it better. I could have designed it better. That's still no argument that it had been designed. For example, World War II. Let's say you see a German Panther tank.
The Panzer tank, yeah.
And then you look at a U.S. Sherman tank. Well, I've done a little bit of looking into that, and I can guarantee I'd rather be in the Panther than the Sherman. It's got a little better armor, it's got a lot better gun, et cetera, et cetera. But you wouldn't look at a Sherman tank and say, oh, that's proof that it wasn't designed by anybody. Now, I'm not saying that God didn't design things as good as they could have been. I'm just saying it's a combination. Maybe you don't know whether it's the optimum design or not, and whether it was designed good or bad doesn't mean it hasn't been designed, and you're not taking into account the fall, the degeneration of man.
Yeah. Okay, answer number 5. There's a 5th response that came in. It's very lucky that everything works out just so that it looks like if it were designed. But if it weren't, we wouldn't be around to notice it.
Okay.
That's the anthropic principle all over again. If the Earth wasn't just the right distance from the sun, if it didn't spin the right speed, if there wasn't water here, and so on and so forth,
then we wouldn't
be here to ask the question.
And so it's just luck. But it's an explanation, but it's not an explanation, because the question was, if they look designed, how do you know that they weren't designed, right? Now, if I got charged with murder in a country that was still used the firing squad, and they pin me up against the post, and there's 10 guys there with guns, and they all stand there, and they're all trained marksmen, and they all aim at me, and click, either the gun doesn't go off or everyone misses.
Or they all miss.
They all miss. They're 15 feet away, and every one of them, trained marksman, misses.
Okay, so you're alive, and the reason is because
if those events hadn't happened,
you wouldn't be here to ask the question or to realize that you were alive.
But does the mere ability for me to ask the question, is that an explanation for why the guns misfired?
You'd naturally be wondering, what's the cause of everyone missing or all the guns misfiring or something like that?
Right.
There's something deeper behind it.
The fact that they all had the last name Smith.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. There's an answer. So really not anything that really challenges the question at all, but people are welcome to write into the website. Go to creation.com, take a look around, get some information, and we believe that if you do so and you really have an open mind, you'll come to the conclusion, as we have, that you can actually trust the Bible from the very first verse. Know that they weren't designed.
Okay.
And Richard Dawkins wrote, "Biology is the study of complicated things that have the appearance of having been designed with a purpose." Francis Crick, the co-discoverer of the double helix structure of DNA, wrote, "Biologists must constantly keep in mind that what they see was not designed, but rather evolved. They've just got to tuck it up there. And we're going to give you the question, then we're going to give you the responses that skeptics have written in
We've
to
got
our
some responses
to our
from
ministries.
these, yes.
And then we'll respond to those and show once again how very difficult for evolutionists to give good responses to these questions. So here it is. Question number 6 in the pamphlet is this: living things look like they were designed. So how do evolutionists... the problem for evolutionists is that living things show too much design. Who objects when an archaeologist says that pottery points to human design, yet if someone attributes a design in living things to a designer, that's not acceptable? Why should science be restricted to naturalistic causes rather than logical? Welcome to Genesis Unleashed, where we unleash the truth of Genesis.
And on today's program, we're going to show you amazing design in living things.
Okay, welcome back to Genesis Unleashed, and we're looking at question number 6 out of our pamphlet, 15 Questions for Evolutionists.